Splatterhouse 2 is a Sega Genesis game that was developed by Namco and released in 1992. Players will take control of Rick, who is definitely not Jason Voorhees, as he dons a powerful sentient mask in an attempt to save his girlfriend from the forces of evil. Having failed to do so in the first game, not Jason sets out to finish what he started. Apparently his princess is in another mansion, which is now materialized in the woods near the house from the first game. Along the way, he fights various ghoulish creatures using everything from his fists to melee weapons and even a shotgun. While the series has always sold itself on over-the-top gore, it seems practically tame by today's standards. That's not to say the main selling point is gone, just nerfed, but judging it solely on its gameplay and technical presentation leaves you with a standard action side-scroller that does very little to set itself apart from other games in the genre. Not Jason slowly marches along from left to right, jumping hazards, punching and kicking enemies, and eventually fights a boss at the end of each stage. Clearly innovation of any kind just wasn't on the agenda for Namco. And I don't say that because the game follows the traditionally established arcade formula, but instead because the stages are all boring flat walks with a few holes or traps to jump over, and that's about the extent of it. At one point I fell through a pit, only to find an alternate route, which was just another boring flat walk with a few holes or traps to jump over. Oh, and there's an elevator stage. The height of variety in Splatterhouse 2 is an elevator stage. Never seen that before. I can't help but wonder if it would have killed Namco to think outside the box a little bit, but apparently they were scared of diverting too much from the basic formula that had already worked in Part 1. The opening cinema scene makes great use of multiple layers, showing off the impressive parallax scrolling, with digitized voices and even a scaling Terra mask that zooms in and out. To see it, you would think Namco was about to treat you to a game that really takes advantage of the hardware, like any game that late in the console's life cycle should. And instead, what follows for the most part is a very bland-looking, paint-by-numbers game. It's serviceable, and I don't think graphical effects and detail are all that important when compared to the core gameplay loop, but it's just jarring coming off the impressive opening scene. Suddenly, right near the end, they crank the effects back up to an 11, and it's just odd. Almost like they really tried for something impressive on a couple of the stages, but kinda just gave up on the others. Similarly, the animation ranges from really fluid on one enemy or boss, and then practically non-existent and choppy on another. The designs of the creatures not Jason fights, and the weapons he occasionally finds on his journey, as well as the creepy atmosphere, are definitely the strong points of the game. The lumbering masses of enemy flesh look like something straight out of a Cronenberg movie. At one point I couldn't help but wonder if they were actually approaching me with the intent of attacking me, or whether these goopy abominations just wanted me to put them out of their misery. Watching your foes splatter all over the house under the weight of your hefty attacks feels deeply satisfying. So, if nothing else, the game is aptly named. Enemies fling into the background as they explode into goo, or get ripped in half before taking a step or two and then falling over. Bosses in particular have excessively delightful death animations, and after fighting many of these frustrating creeps, it feels pretty good to see them decomposing in grand fashion. My personal favorite part of the entire game involved grabbing a shotgun and going to town, Rambo style, on the various bad guys, while chunks and viscera went flying in all directions. Unfortunately, I only found one shotgun in the entire game though, and it had very limited ammo. I guess we can't let the player have too much fun, can we? Another issue I have is that not Jason feels a bit clunky to me, and the game constantly demands a level of precision that the controls just don't seem to offer. It feels almost like an ice stage in a Mario game, except all the time. Okay, I'm exaggerating, it's not quite that bad, but the hero does feel like he slides just a little bit when you stop walking. You can control your jump in midair, but it just feels floaty and awkward there as well. To compound these control issues, the enemy hitboxes seem completely unforgiving, and some of them have extra long reach and will just spam their attack, leaving you cowering in a ducking position waiting for your opening. Not Jason, fueled by the demonic mask and occasionally armed to the teeth, seems way stronger than the various demons and creatures he's fighting. Yet, I spent half the game getting slapped around all over the place like an absolute stooge, which is just not very intimidating for a character that was definitely not modeled after Jason Voorhees, an unmovable force of destruction. Has the whole not Jason joke gotten old yet? I apologize, I really didn't have anything else to go with, so I figured I'd just run that one into the ground. There were definite moments of fun to be had in Splatterhouse 2, but I think the game reminds me of a typical horror movie sequel. An unimaginative rehashing of the first one that goes through all the expected motions, but in the end feels quite soulless and lacking. I don't feel like the developers put much love in crafting a game inspired by Lovecraft. It's a game that 1 second will impress you, and then immediately go right back to being mediocre as hell for a large chunk of its short length. If you're like me, you'll probably never stop cursing the imprecise controls and overwhelming amount of enemies bombarding you constantly. One moment, you'll be breezing through it like it's nothing, and the next you'll be headbutting a brick wall of a cheap boss until you succeed. Still, introducing the various enemies to the business side of a 2x4 amid explosions of cartoony gore remains satisfying throughout. Final score, 7. Pros: awesome character designs and gore. Fun but limited weapon pickups. Eerie music, atmosphere, and level design. Cons: imprecise movement and jumping controls, inconsistent technical quality, and a lack of improvement or innovation.